Sebastian Martinelli was a name that carried weight in the art world. His paintings, known for their emotional depth and haunting beauty, adorned the walls of prestigious galleries across Europe and beyond. Critics called him a genius, a man whose brush could capture not only the likeness of his subjects but the very essence of their soul. His rise to fame had been meteoric, and at just 38 years old, he was already considered one of the greatest painters of his generation. But to Sebastian, his greatest masterpiece wasn't hanging in a gallery, it was the life he had built with his wife, Isabelle. She was everything a man like him could dream of, stunningly beautiful, with cascading dark hair and piercing green eyes that seemed to hold secrets she'd never tell. She was intelligent too, fluent in several languages and a skilled conversationalist, making her a fixture at every high society event. People envied Sebastian not just for his talent but for the woman by his side. In public, they were the epitome of elegance and class, the perfect couple. For Sebastian, Isabelle was more than just a wife, she was his muse. Her beauty and grace had inspired many of his most famous works. She brought him peace and a sense of completeness he had never known before. He would often watch her move about their grand estate, imagining the next canvas he would dedicate to her. He believed their love was the driving force behind his success. To him, their marriage was flawless, an unbreakable union of heart and soul. Life was good. Their friends often remarked that the Martinellis were living a dream, a fairy tale in the real world. And for a long time, Sebastian believed it too. But fairy tales, as he would soon learn, can turn into nightmares in the blink of an eye. It started with small things, details so insignificant that most would have ignored them. But Sebastian was a man trained to observe the subtle, to notice the flicker of emotion behind a smile, the hidden tension in a glance. Isabelle had always been attentive, present, but recently, something had shifted. Her once warm embrace had grown cold, and her laughter, once genuine, now felt rehearsed. She was often distracted, glancing at her phone with a fleeting smile before slipping it into her purse. When he asked where she had been, her answers became vague. Lunch with friends, she'd say, though she never mentioned which ones. At first, Sebastian told himself he was imagining things. He was a man prone to overthinking, after all. But the late nights became more frequent, the whispered phone calls more common. He noticed the way she would walk into another room when her phone rang, how her eyes would light up in a way they hadn't for him in months. There was a distance between them now, a void he couldn't quite understand but felt growing every day. One afternoon, as Isabelle showered, she left her phone on the bed. It was unlocked, glowing with the screen still active. Sebastian knew better than to invade her privacy, but something deeper, darker urged him forward. His heart pounded as he picked up the phone, hands shaking slightly. The truth he had been trying to deny was right there in front of him. Messages. Dozens of them. Some harmless, but others filled with words that pierced his heart. "I can't wait to see you again," read one. "Last night was amazing," said another. His breath caught in his throat as he scrolled through the images, a series of pictures of Isabelle and another man. They were intimate, laughing in places she had never mentioned, their closeness unmistakable. Sebastian felt as if the ground had fallen from beneath his feet. His vision blurred, heart racing as his mind tried to process the betrayal. The woman he had adored, his muse, had given herself to someone else. In that moment, a torrent of emotions crashed over him, rage, hurt, disbelief. How could she do this? After everything they had shared, after all he had given her? But instead of confronting her immediately, instead of shouting or breaking down, something colder settled inside him. A clarity that cut through the pain. He closed the phone, put it back exactly where he found it, and breathed deeply. Confronting her would be too easy, too simple. She had wounded him deeply, and he would make sure she felt the same. No, he wouldn't confront her, not yet. Sebastian was an artist, and his revenge would be a masterpiece. In the days following his discovery, Sebastian mastered the art of deception. The anger that once threatened to consume him was buried deep beneath a mask of calm indifference. He treated Isabel with the same warmth as before, perhaps even more, knowing that it would make his eventual revenge all the sweeter. He watched her carefully, studying her every move, noting how she seemed relieved by his apparent ignorance. Her smiles returned, her mood lightened, and she became more affectionate, as if soothing her own guilt. It was then that Sebastian began to put his plan into motion. One evening, as they sat together in their sprawling living room, surrounded by the trappings of their perfect life, he turned to her with an almost boyish excitement in his eyes. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice calm but filled with a subtle intensity. "My next piece. I want it to be something different. Something bold. Something that will redefine my work." He paused, letting the weight of his words hang in the air. "And I want you to be the center of it. My muse, once again." Isabel looked at him, her expression softening as she soaked in the compliment. "You really think I could inspire something like that again?" she asked, almost coyly. "Of course," he replied, his gaze locking onto hers with unwavering sincerity. "No one else could. You've always been my greatest inspiration." The flattery worked perfectly. Isabel's cheeks flushed, her earlier doubts about their relationship momentarily forgotten. She smiled, touched by the thought that despite everything, her lies, her deceit, he still saw her as his muse. In her mind, she still held all the power. Little did she know that this was exactly what he wanted her to believe. Over the next few weeks, Sebastian made every detail of his plan appear genuine. He set up his studio with care, choosing the largest canvas he had ever worked on. He told Isabel that this painting would be his magnum opus, a tribute to the essence of their love, of her beauty and grace. She agreed to pose for him regularly, flattered by his renewed interest in her. She saw it as a sign that their marriage was stronger than ever, that whatever distance had formed between them was now erased. Each session, she would sit in the center of the room, illuminated by soft, golden light. Sebastian, ever the professional, would study her with a keen eye, his brush strokes deliberate and precise. From her point of view, it was just like old times, him, entranced by her form, and her, basking in his admiration. But as she sat, oblivious to his true intentions, Sebastian's mind was elsewhere. Behind the cool expression he wore while painting, he was carefully plotting each stroke of his revenge. This painting wasn't going to be the tribute she expected. It was going to be a revelation, a visual confession of her betrayal, laid bare for the world to see. Every stroke would expose the lies she had woven, every layer of paint another step towards her ultimate humiliation. The beauty of his plan was that Isabel had no idea what was coming. She was blinded by her own vanity, convinced that her charm and allure had once again captivated her husband. She had no reason to suspect that the man painting her so lovingly was also the man plotting her downfall. To her, everything was perfect. Sebastian, however, knew better. He had turned his pain into something much more powerful, something that would not only bring him closure but would also leave her in ruins. And the best part? She was helping him create it, stroke by stroke. The night of the gallery exhibition had finally arrived, and the air buzzed with excitement. Sebastian's reputation had brought together an elite crowd, wealthy patrons, art critics, socialites, and the media, all eager to see his latest masterpiece. The gallery was packed, the walls lined with his previous works, beautiful, evocative portraits that had solidified his place as one of the greatest painters of his time. But tonight, all eyes were on the centerpiece, the large canvas that remained hidden behind a velvet curtain, promising to be his most ambitious creation yet. Isabel, dressed in a sleek black gown that accentuated her natural beauty, mingled with the crowd, soaking in the admiration of those around her. She was radiant, confident, the picture of elegance as she greeted the guests, many of whom had known her for years. Her role as Sebastian's muse was no secret, and tonight she wore that title with pride, fully expecting that the painting beneath the curtain would only cement her status further. Sebastian moved through the room with a quiet calm. His charm was effortless, his face betraying none of the storm that brewed beneath the surface. He exchanged pleasantries with the crowd, but his mind was entirely focused on the moment to come. His masterpiece was ready, and so was he. As the hour approached, a hush fell over the gallery. The lights dimmed slightly, and a spotlight illuminated the shrouded painting. Sebastian stepped forward, taking his place at the center of the room, with Isabelle beside him. He smiled warmly at her, and she returned the gesture, completely unaware of the spectacle about to unfold. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Sebastian began, his voice carrying through the space with a quiet authority. "This painting, it is, without a doubt, the most personal work I have ever created. It's a reflection of love, of trust, and of the human condition. But more than that, it is a revelation. A truth that has been hidden for too long." Isabelle beamed, her heart swelling with pride, believing his words to be a testament to their relationship, to the bond they shared. But as the curtain slowly lifted, revealing the painting to the room, her smile began to falter. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the image came into view. The painting was a masterwork, yes, but it was not the loving, romantic portrait Isabelle had imagined. Instead, it was a brutal and raw depiction of her betrayal, rendered in excruciating detail. On the canvas, Isabelle was portrayed in intimate, compromising moments with another man, her face clearly visible, her infidelity exposed for all to see. Every detail of her affair had been captured with an artist's precision, the secretive meetings, the stolen glances, the messages exchanged in the dark. For a moment, there was stunned silence. The audience, unsure of how to react, simply stared at the canvas, trying to comprehend what they were seeing. And then, the whispers began. Murmurs of shock, of disbelief, swept through the room. The media, ever hungry for scandal, immediately began snapping photos, their cameras flashing as they captured both the painting and Isabelle's reaction. She stood frozen, her face drained of color, eyes wide as she stared at the damning image of herself. The room seemed to spin around her, the admiring gazes she had basked in only moments before now replaced by looks of judgment, pity, and disgust. Her pristine reputation, carefully curated over years, was shattered in an instant. "Sebastian," she whispered, her voice barely audible, trembling with disbelief. What is this?" He turned to her, his expression cold and detached. "It's the truth, Isabelle," he said softly, his words sharp as a blade. "A reflection of who you truly are." Tears welled in her eyes as the full weight of her humiliation crashed down upon her. The whispers had grown louder, the crowd now openly discussing the affair, dissecting every detail of the scandal unfolding before them. She could hear her name on their lips, the sharp sting of gossip slicing through her composure. Desperate, she reached for Sebastian's arm, as if clinging to the last shred of dignity she could find. But he gently pulled away, his voice steady as he delivered the final blow. "This is what you deserve." Isabelle's world crumbled around her. The life she had known, the social status she had prized so highly, was gone. In one devastating moment, she had lost everything: her husband, her reputation, her pride. And all of it had been meticulously orchestrated by the man she had betrayed. As the crowd continued to buzz with excitement, Sebastian stood tall, his eyes scanning the room. The reactions were exactly as he had anticipated. The art critics were already hailing the painting as a bold and daring masterpiece, praising its raw emotional depth. His name would only grow larger after tonight, his fame reaching new heights. And Isabelle? She would forever be remembered not as the beautiful, poised wife of a great artist, but as the woman whose betrayal had been immortalized in the cruelest of ways. The exhibition was a triumph, exactly as Sebastian had planned. The painting, now titled Betrayal Unveiled, quickly became the talk of the art world. Critics hailed it as a groundbreaking piece of raw emotional honesty, praising Sebastian for his audacity and creative genius. They marveled at how he had taken a personal tragedy and turned it into art that both shocked and mesmerized. The media latched onto the scandal, and within days, the painting went viral, spreading across social platforms like wildfire. The public was captivated not just by the artwork, but by the story behind it, the ultimate revenge of a betrayed husband, revealed in brutal, unflinching detail. Sebastian's fame skyrocketed. Offers for commissions poured in from every corner of the world, and galleries clamored to host exhibitions of his work. Overnight, he became a symbol of artistic brilliance and emotional resilience, a man who had turned his darkest moment into a masterpiece. He was invited to talk shows, his interviews going viral as he calmly spoke of his process, never once displaying any bitterness or anger. He was poised, composed, and the embodiment of triumph over betrayal. For Isabelle, the fallout was swift and unforgiving. The high society life she had cherished collapsed around her. The social circles that once welcomed her with open arms now whispered behind her back, their polite smiles barely hiding their schadenfreude. She could no longer walk into a room without feeling the weight of judgmental stares or overhearing snide comments about her affair. The scandal followed her everywhere, from the tabloids to the dinner parties she had once ruled. The once glamorous life she had cultivated was now nothing more than a reminder of her disgrace. Every attempt she made to apologize to Sebastian was met with cold indifference. She called him, sent messages, even showed up at his studio once, but he never gave her the satisfaction of a response. He had moved on, emotionally and artistically. There was nothing left to discuss. The man who had once adored her now saw her as nothing more than a lesson, an example of what happens when trust is betrayed. And the world saw it too, thanks to the very painting she had unknowingly helped create. Sebastian's success continued to soar. Each new gallery exhibition drew larger crowds than the last, and the demand for his work showed no signs of slowing down. With each passing day, his reputation as both an artistic and emotional powerhouse solidified. He had turned his pain into power, and the world admired him for it. His social calendar filled with new faces, patrons, artists, and admirers eager to be in his orbit. He had no need for Isabelle or the life they had once shared. For Isabelle, however, the nightmare never ended. Her public humiliation was complete, her reputation in tatters. Her once bright future was now overshadowed by the weight of her betrayal, immortalized on canvas for the world to see. No matter how hard she tried to move forward, the painting hung over her like a dark cloud, a permanent reminder of her downfall. In the end, Sebastian had won. He stood taller than ever before, his name synonymous with brilliance and resilience. Isabelle was left to pick up the pieces of a life she had destroyed with her own hands, isolated and ashamed. And as he looked back on it all, Sebastian felt no regret, no lingering sadness for what had been lost. His revenge had been swift, cold, and beautiful, just as he had intended. He had not only exposed her betrayal, but he had also ensured that she would forever live in its shadow. For him, the painting was more than just art, it was closure. He had created a masterpiece, and with it, he had set himself free. And so, Sebastian emerged victorious, a man who turned betrayal into brilliance and used his pain to craft a masterpiece that not only immortalized his revenge but set him free. Isabelle, on the other hand, was left to face the consequences of her actions, her once glamorous life now reduced to whispers of shame. If you enjoyed this story of vengeance, betrayal, and ultimate triumph, be sure to like this video and hit that subscribe button for more gripping tales of real men who rise above betrayal. This is only stories about men, where every story ends with justice served.